Dwayne Tiro.
I couldn't do that. Could you do that? How can they do that?
Who are those guys?
Uncommon Sense with the Senior Delinquents.
Well, hi once again, everybody, to another fabulous episode of Uncommon Sense with the Senior Delinquents. I'm half of that team. I'm Dennis Silvers right here in Las Vegas. Well, you know, you've just seen history being made. Will Smith clapping with one hand. Wow. Let me introduce my great co-host who is in Tampa, Florida, the Sunshine State, Jamie McWilliams. And like me, Jamie, I know that you love good movies. Am I right?
You're right, and I've gone full Hollywood sunshine with the
I
shirt,
see that.
the
I love it.
specs.
I love it.
But it's a little hard to see with the specs, so I will take them off.
Okay.
And yes, I do love movies. And this is one indication of how much I do love movies. Look at all these movies. But here's the irony about it. These are DVDs that are sent to me because I am still a member of the Directors Guild, and the Directors Guild gets to vote on who's the best director, TV, all that. I don't vote on TV, but just the films. So they send me all of these DVDs, and I'm supposed to look at them to make an intelligent decision as to which is the best movie. Well, it used to be like Christmas time. All of these DVDs coming because the judging period goes just after New Year's,
Right.
but they send you the things because Christmas is the big movie release time.
Yeah.
So it was like getting Christmas presents. You know, a lot of these things are released on streaming services. They'll send it out for a release in the theater for maybe a week, and then they'll put it on the streaming service. So a lot of times the programs that I get, the DVDs I get, are films that have already been released.
Mm-hmm.
The second problem, and this is the bigger one, is that when it comes to the quality of the movies, I'm not about to say that there are a lot of bad movies. They're not bad movies, but it's harder to see the really outstanding movies that I'm kind of used to seeing.
Right.
There have always been some that just jump at you. And nowadays, too many of the movies, frankly, are thematic or woke, or if they're historical, they distort it to make sure that they have the right casting decisions.
Right.
So when I held up all of this pile of DVDs, there's a larger pile that I tried to watch some of, but basically I said, forget it. And just to not clutter up the house, they went into the bin.
Isn't it hard to pick winners with all of those DVDs that you get?
It's a different type of process because I have in the past voted for films which I personally didn't feel were maybe the ones I liked the best, but
Right.
I felt that from a directorial point of view, they were absolutely fantastic. Like the remake of The Road Warrior, it got mixed reviews. Some of the things that director did were incredible. But here's the other part of trying to judge things nowadays. You have movies that are very, very thematic, no real effects. Then you have other movies that are loaded with special effects.
Right.
And the question arises in your mind, where did that creativity come from? How much was director? How much was art
Right.
director? How much was the computer wizards? So it gets a little bit more muddled.
The one I liked for last year was like Spider-Man, you know, with Tom Holland. I like the action. I like the special effects like that. I don't know if you're into something like that or not.
Very, very well done. Very interesting. But in the awards process, this year's winner had a lot of really nice visual aspects to it. But as a director, I didn't feel that in terms of telling the story and everything that was done with it, in my mind, it wasn't the best film. Actually, what I voted for was West Side Story. I don't even really like remakes. They're usually not as good as the original. The reason I voted for it is that Steven Spielberg, while he did a lot of the same things and the way things need to be presented now in terms of the demographics, etc., but he did some very beautiful, creative things with the movie, and he made some changes to it. Even though it's Steven Spielberg who's been around like us a long, long time, I gave him the nod because I felt his movie showed some really great creativity in the way the cameras moved, the way they integrated the special effects. But let's go the other way. Did you go for any real stinkers? Like, were there any, like, this is a bad movie?
Well, I'll tell you what I thought, and maybe you agree and you could expound on it. I thought Deadlock was horrible.
Speaking of Deadlock, this is absolutely true. My wife and I watched the movie, and Bruce Willis didn't do much action. He didn't say much. He was the heavy in the movie.
Right.
And we kept commenting that the writing was horrible. Directorially, it was horrible. And it's emblematic of the fact that they still are trying to recoup from the dearth of movies. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
And
it was
totally
so
agree.
dumb and so poorly executed.
Yeah.
And I'm not making this up. The day after we watched it, they announced that Bruce Willis had aphasia.
Right.
And I said, well, that would explain why they did what they did with him in the movie.
This is my legacy.
I felt really bad about it and felt sorry for Bruce, but I want to take the positive side and say, at least now he can play the president.
I love that. Let me ask you this. Yeah, I long for the old days, Jamie, and I'm sure you do too, when gas wasn't a fortune, when ticket prices were reasonable, when the concession stuff was reasonable. Now, to take a family to the movies, Jamie, it is a small fortune. Just getting there, buying the tickets, buying the popcorn. Oh, you want butter on your popcorn? That'll be an extra 50 cents. What gives with that, Jamie?
Well, I may be a little off on this because it's been some years, but a while back, I was doing for a professional hockey team, the video that appears on the overhead and the scoreboards. And the guy whom I worked with had managed a movie theater. And he was saying, if it wasn't for the concession stand, they would not be making money.
Wow.
Movies had gotten so expensive and their licensing to show them that the concession stand drove their actually making money. When you talk about the old movie experience, they have the huge screens now, but don't really have so much of the huge theaters. I remember when I had my office in New York, but we didn't live there. We lived in Pennsylvania, but we would see occasionally a movie in New York. When Close Encounters of the Third Kind premiered with some friends, we went up to the Ziegfeld Theater, huge theater. When we sat there, it was a huge screen and a blank, dark screen. And the whole audience fell back. You don't get that watching a DVD or in those days a VHS. By the way, the Ziegfeld Theater is gone.
Oh boy.
Emblematic of what's happened. It makes me wonder, do you think that movie theaters will survive?
You know, Jamie, I think business has gotten pretty stinky in the movie business, movie theater business.
There's certain films that will pull the audiences in, but for these other films, and again, it's not that they're bad, but they're just kind of like, okay, so how are you going to get people to spend the type of money that we were talking about a moment ago at the theater to see something that they could get at home and say it's the pricing of it is astronomically higher to make the trip to the theater? You have to really give people a reason to get out to the theater.
Absolutely correct. Hey, listen, we love bringing you to the show, and I want to remind you, you can catch us on the web at seniordelinquents.com. If you'd like a subject discussed with Jamie and I, info at seniordelinquents.com.
We're on YouTube. We're now trying to make sure we put everything together funneled to where people can get it readily.
Correct.
I don't know. I've had second thoughts about even bringing this up, but I would like to relate. And I have to give you, you know how they give you the warning that say what you're about to hear or see could be a little bit. But this is a true story, which I'm gonna own up to. Just before I got married, my wife to be at that time was back in New Jersey teaching. I worked some on the weekends. I was in Columbus, and right at Ohio State, near the campus, they had this pizza place, and they had a movie theater there. So one Saturday afternoon, I decided to go see a movie, and it was a Fellini movie called Satyricon. Very bizarre movie. Saturday afternoon, I go into the theater, and I see maybe one person up front there and another person off to the side. And I sit down right in the middle, and I have had my Vesuvius pizza, and unfortunately, Mount Vesuvius started to erupt in my stomach.
You're kidding.
The movie had these long parts to it with a lot of clamor and excitement.
Oh, my
so I looked around, nobody up there. I looked this way. I even swiveled around like this.
Don't
and
tell
finally,
me.
It came.
Oh, good heavens.
A horrible, wretched, loud,
my
and
God.
smelly fart.
Oh, God.
And I felt so relieved until directly behind me, I hear feet shuffling, and oh my God. And it was a couple who I think sat directly behind me so they could just make out.
They didn't make out, they ran out. That's a great story.
They ran out.
That's a
And
great
on
story.
that pleasant note, this is why I didn't have it available then, but I've got it now. I could have used a stiff drink and maybe crawled under the seats. But until next time, when we meet again,
Yes.
it's hi ho, Silvers.